So welcome to the webinar. Welcome to the last Tuesday Health and Wellbeing Club. And it's the second of the series, and exciting news over in the UK from yesterday's now Tuesday here was that Boris has announced the sort of easing of restrictions over in the UK, so things can happen on a graded principle. Great for businesses in the UK. Over here in France and Luxembourg, I think we're about 3 months behind, but that's going to follow on as well. So some encouraging news coming along. And my guest today, or our guest today, is Stuart Nottingham, who's a colleague, friend of mine. Stuart, we've known each other for about 75 years, it feels like.
At least.
Stuart is a registered occupational health and chartered physiotherapist. He will explain what that means, but what he's going to be talking about is some of the ramifications of home working, flexible working, what you should do for yourselves and maybe with your teams as well. So I'm going to pass over to Stuart for the presentation. I'm going to mute myself and listen. Any questions, please type them in. And we'll come back in about 40 minutes and have an open session with Stuart as well. So Stuart, thank you for coming on board. I really appreciate you doing this, putting yourself into the line of fire.
Pleasure.
And I'm going to go quiet. Stuart, please introduce yourself. The floor is yours. And we'll back in about 40 minutes to have a debrief.
Hi there, and thanks for joining tonight. It's good to be able to talk to you. And any questions, please, let's open for all questions later on. Right, now I have the rather catchy title of Registered Occupational Health Chartered Physiotherapist, but forget that. Basically, I'm a physiotherapist who works in occupational health and ergonomics. That's kind of my background and what I do. I run an occupational health business in the UK. We service customers like Jaguar Land Rover and Cadbury's as key people. So I've been kicking around the game for far too long. I have a very dubious past, having spent 10 years working with professional sports teams around the UK and the world, with some of the characters and very dubious characters put into those slides. I've spent the last 20 years doing ergonomics, and I got very fed up with the office ergonomics business. So I set up another business to try and challenge the status quo. And we're, I think, quite successfully doing that. And it's very interesting. A lot of our competitors are now moving towards our stance, which is good and it's bad, but that's kind of where we are. So that's who I am. So let's start with home working. This is what it's a complete revolution and a complete change in the way that we need to think about working and actually work. But it's also probably the biggest opportunity that's been given us as a population to dig ourselves out of a hole, which I'm going to be defining in the next few minutes. And there's a lot of work going on in the background, a lot of government nudge squads, and everything I'm talking about, I'm afraid, is UK biased. If you want to educate me on what's going on in Europe, please do, because there obviously is divergence. So with home working, the health and safety executive have now come off the shelf and off the fence and said, hey, you must look after your home workers, because they're now realizing that it's no longer a temporary situation. Yep. So it's a case of it's happening. We haven't got a clue what it actually means. The phrase that comes up in anybody who's into health and safety knows the term for reasonably practicable keeps coming up. What is reasonably practicable? Well, you ain't got a clue. Yeah, if we're going to be really honest, there's no case law and there's no clear guidance from the HSE, which you kind of wouldn't expect at the moment. But one thing certainly does, any of you listening who are in employers, the Equality Act clearly applies. So if you've got people with disability who are working from home, you've got to really take their situation seriously and make sure that they're working comfortably and safely. So that's kind of where the law is at the moment. But the law is actually a little bit more complex, because if you imagine what you were using as a computer in 2002, it was deeper than it was wide. The idea of home working, you're having a laugh. Yeah, and things like smartphones just didn't exist. So the regulations are very, very shaky in how they guide you. Very archaic, and the HSE have already said they won't be looking at it to 2025 due to the banned B word, which is quite ridiculous, but that's where we are. So we're kind of in a limbo, but the pathway is really clear. And I say the government nudge squads are well in action. And the problem is this. Yeah. We know that we've got a pandemic of sedentary living on our hands, and the cost of that we're going to be looking at in the next few minutes as to how much it needs to change and how we, the government, are going to change it, and we need to change it. So the biggest study, sorry, I've got no apologies of actually referencing things I'm saying here because there's too much fake news out there. Let's have a real set adult conversation with some facts. Okay, this is the biggest study done to date. There's other studies being done since 2012 to back it up, but we'll keep going to this one. So if you compare the most active people in the population to the least active people in the population, the least active have 112% chance of increase of diabetes, 147% chance of cardiovascular event. Is that, to me, they're amazingly big numbers. And you've got to question, well, okay, sedentary living as a conclusion is unhealthy. Yep. This isn't new, of course. Yeah, the first ever occupational health piece of research came out in 1952, and it involved route master bus drivers and clippies. Actually, clippies, that's not very English, is it? It's conductors. Yep. What they found was the drivers were twice as likely to die of heart disease than the conductors. And the question was why? And the difference was the drivers were sitting down all day. Even though they were driving a bus with no power steering, no brake servo, and I can imagine the clutches were incredibly heavy on those things, they still were dying because of sedentary living, where the conductors were running up and down stairs and standing all day. So big differences. So this isn't new. This isn't something that's just suddenly crept up on us. This has been known about well beyond my lifetime. Now that's saying something. So the conclusion is, and the buzz phrase that you may have all come across is, this sitting is new smoking. It's a very American phrase, and it's come through. But the evidence is incontrovertible that it is, and we need to get sedentary sitting from a position of normality to a position where it's socially not the done thing to sit all day at work and not move. In the same way as smoking in the office, well, I can remember that, yeah, to, where you've got to be 10 meters away from the building, or how many meters it is, out away from the building before you smoke. In our current legislation, that's where we need to move sedentary sitting. So here's a little challenge for you. Yeah, this is the 2019 HSE guidelines, Public Health England guidelines. How many, I'm not, I shouldn't ask, but how many people here can honestly say they comply with those regulations? Yeah, and those recommendations. What's really interesting for anybody looking at this, it's actually, they've introduced in 2019 the idea of you can't just do 150 minutes of ironing, which was in the previous guidelines, and housework. It now involves weights. It now involves some stretching, meditative stuff, and it actually stresses the time, minimize the amount of time you're actually sitting for extended periods. Because what we know about the UK adults there is this. Men are more likely than women to sit down for more than 6 hours. Oh, I think that's rubbish, but that's complete and utter tosh. But the principle is there. Yeah. So we've got a massive difference between the requirement and the need for people to move and the reality of people moving. Yep. So what's the cost to the individual, if you as an individual, if you don't move? Yeah. Well, we're in an amazing situation at the moment where the actuaries are actually saying that instead of life expectancy getting bigger and bigger and bigger, it's actually dropping. So, the millennials and below, their life expectancy on average is now less than the life expectancy of the people in their 30s and 40s. That was unthinkable, 20 years ago, to think that life expectancy wasn't going to continue to get bigger, better and better, and we were all going to live to 100. That was, 20, 30 years ago was a kind of, we were expecting that to happen. It clearly isn't. And the reason it's not going to happen is because of preventable disease. Yep, diabetes, heart disease, all the things we're talking about. So the cost to the individual is enormous. Yeah. The pension funds love it, but the cost to the individual, it's wrong. But the cost to the government, cost to us as the government or to society, is also enormous. So 10% of the NHS budget goes on diabetes care. Another 10%, of course, goes on litigation. Well, that's a scandal in its own right, isn't it? But if we continue to have a situation that is to mirror the American model, currently, according to the British Diabetic Association, 18% of UK adults are either pre-diabetic, in other words, are developing diabetes, or are diabetic. And we're talking about type 2 here, not talking about type 1 genetic. Yep. The American Diabetic Association are reporting 33% of the American adult population are pre-diabetic or diabetic. We're following along quite nicely. And of course, the French with their amazing diet haven't got this problem. And, nobody in Europe's got this problem at all. It's just so, it's so different. The numbers, of course, are less, particularly into places like Italy, because of their diet. Yeah, it's so different. But of course, as McDonald's opens and proliferates, can't say it, it will become, they will catch up very, very rapidly. And that's happening in the Far East, that the diabetes rates are going through the roof as Western food enters their marketplace. So if you were a government and sitting in government, well, what would your driver be to start stopping sedentary living? It's 10% of the NHS budget and escalating exponentially. How are you going to stop it? Yeah, so this is something that you're going to hear more and more of as time goes through, because we need to be, keeping a lid on this if we can. And the only way you can keep a lid on it is change people's culture and way they work and live. Okay, so if we take the holistic view and the whole view, if you like, yeah, I hate the word holistic. It's Boer War that originated from guerrilla warfare. If you want to go back into the root of that word, because it doesn't quite mean what we want it to mean. But yeah, okay, so most businesses are now saying that post-pandemic, we're going to be blended working. It's going to be part-time at home, part-time working in the office, and the way the office is going to look is going to be different. Most people are now talking about contemplative zones, which is going to be home working, and collaborative zones, which is going to be your office working. Yeah, and so that's the kind of language that's coming out of most places at the moment. There's very few businesses. I come across one yesterday that are saying there's no way we're having anybody home working. They're all coming back, but they're very much out of step. I think they're going to have problems because there's multiple surveys. The biggest one was done by the CIPD, the HR people, actually on whether people want to come back to work, and it's vast majority is they don't want to come back to work full time in the office. Yeah, no, that's very clear. Yeah, businesses are becoming more and more mindful that there's the mental health issues of people sitting at home. I'm sure you talk to people as well as I do who are sitting in a 1-bedroom flat in Canary Wharf or something like that. There's 3 of them in this flat, and they're all home working. It must be absolutely horrendous for them to be able to work in those situations. And we got a situation, as a London bank person said to me just before Christmas, we got a situation where all the senior managers who are in the leafy suburbs and have got their big houses in Surrey, they're very happy and don't want to come back to work. They don't want to come back to the office. They're very happy, thank you very much. But all their junior staff who live in these 1-bedroom flats, they're desperate to come back into the office. And how do you manage people's expectations, and how do you manage people when you've got such a diverse view? And I think most people are recognizing the senior managers need to be in the office, and don't want to be. So that's kind of where we are. So The mind stuff is, you look at the referral rates coming through at the moment in my core world of occupational health. It used to be in an average year, 40% was mental health, 40% was musculoskeletal, my field, and 20% was others. Cancer and all the nasties usually. Yep. So, but now what's happening is my area is shrinking massively, and mental health is just going absolutely ballistic. The referrals for mental health, the counselling companies can't keep up. I'm in the wrong business. It's totally the wrong business. I should have been a CBT practitioner. Yeah. So it's a case of what we need to be looking at is actually how we can help our keep people mentally healthy. And what we know is that exercise is as effective as drugs for mild anxiety and depression. Yep, strong evidence to that statement. And that comes back to William James, Harvard University, saying that bodily experience is causing emotion. If I go and punch David in the arm, he'll feel pain and he'll probably get a bit angry with me. I can't think why. No reason at all. Probably punch me back as well. But so it's quite clear that bodily emotion, experience causes emotion. But what we also know is if you spend your life in a slumped up posture and your lungs are compressed and the way you breathe becomes more higher up the lungs, it leads to different emotional states. This is work that's done at Harvard as well by Amy Cuddy. Anybody who hasn't looked at her work before, particularly the ladies on this call, her core subject is female empowerment. Really interesting stuff that she goes into. Worth looking at. Very accessible work, very accessible indeed. So what we know is people who are working on their bed or on the settee all day are feeling depressed. We also know that these postures lead to depression. Hang on a minute. What have we got to do? We've got to start setting people up working correctly. Well, that's what the health and safety executive are also saying. We've got to actually start taking a duty of care as employers for our employees to actually get them into a good working situation where they can work in good postures. Everybody following? Yeah. If you've got any questions that are burning immediately, please come back to me. Right. So we need to deal with the body and the mind together. How are we doing? Yep. So now it was John, wasn't it, who spoke a month ago. He touched on this subject called NEAT. He called it NEA. Yep. Now, if we're talking about active working, getting people off their butts while they're in the workplace, let's take the second thing down first. Let's take it out of order. Public Health England say that we should not be sitting all day at work. We should be aiming to be walking around for 2 hours with the ambition of being up on our feet for 4 hours in every working day. That's plus what the Public Health England say you should be doing on exercise. It's plus, not with. It's very much a plus. So what we need to be doing is actually saying to people, how can we get you off your butt and working? Yeah, well, the obvious things are video calls. Yeah. Why are you guys all sitting down at the moment? Yeah. Why aren't you standing? Yeah. What is it that's culturally making you want to sit? There's a metaphor that says you think on your feet. It's not a metaphor, it's fact. Yeah. You think better when you're literally walking around and problem solving. Yeah. Good evidence on that. So we need to get people standing for video calls and moving around, and it becomes socially acceptable for everybody to get off their benches and just go, okay, let's stand for a while and let's move around for a while. Yeah, that it's got to be become a socially acceptable thing. So I'll just move to slide. Yep, I'll go back. So NEAT is the idea of you standing. So me standing now, I'm doing NEAT, because I'm not sitting in a zero gravity position where my body is being completely supported by whatever surface I'm sitting on. So a guy called Levine, again, if you want to read more after this, Levine's work is the key place to go. Yeah, it's a case of, and again, it's very accessible reading. He says the difference between the most obese person in the workplace and the most lean person in the workplace is 2 hours and 15 minutes of somebody standing and moving around. Now, that's the difference. We'll come back to that as a concept later on in a few minutes' time, but just keep that on board, that it's this idea of you just standing and moving that gives the health benefits, not just sitting down all day. There's another rule, we'll come on to that, yeah. Okay, so what are the benefits of active working? Well, we know it increases productivity, strong evidence. The best way to increase productivity, do you remember when we were all in the offices and we all sat down in a meeting room and vegetated for 2 hours for a meeting? Yeah. If you take the chairs out of that room and put a breakfast bar in instead for people to rest their laptops or their notes on, that meeting lasts 2/3 of the length of time. That's productivity to me. And you think of the cost of 10 people sitting around in a meeting for 2 hours. Yeah, let's reduce that time by 2/3. Hey, you're willing. Yeah, that's what we need to be thinking about. Yep. So the cost, I'll keep changing that slide. My apologies. So we know that happiness increases. Yeah, we know that staff turnover decreases. Strong evidence. Work absence also drops. Yeah, which as an health practitioner, that's definitely where we need to be. So going on to Cornell University work, all the best work on ergonomics is in American. I don't know why, but it is. So Alan Hedges basically says, rather than the Public Health England say stand for 20 minutes, or stand for 2 hours, he's saying for every half an hour, you sit and then get up and move around for 10. Because that's based on work for the Mars mission from NASA. So putting man on Mars is NASA's biggest goal. And the biggest technical problem is you get somebody out of the spacecraft when they come back to Earth, their muscle mass will be 0, their bones will be highly osteoporotic, and basically they'll crumple up into a heap and die. Yep, that's the biggest technical problem of putting man onto Mars 2 years out, 2 years back. And so a lot of work on the Skylab, you've seen people running in running machines where they've been compressed and all this kind of stuff. That's what this mission's all about. But of course, if you're sitting, you're in zero gravity. So they can actually measure how much degradation. So it's actually this squatting movement of sitting, standing that gives you the health benefit. It's not standing for 2 hours, it's sitting and standing. That's where his work comes in. So how do we achieve this? Do we all need to rush out and buy sit-stand desks? Okay, I think they're brilliant. I won't give mine up for any love or money, but do we need them? No, because we can be we're spending so much time, or most people are spending so much time on video calls, yeah, and telephone audio calls. You can be standing and moving around and it's almost irrelevant where the desk is. Yeah. So do we need to be using them? No. If you have a country that actually says it's the law to have a sit-stand desk, called Denmark, yeah, what happens is people all have these lovely sit-stand desks. The furniture dealers make a lot of money. Thank you very much. I think it definitely needs to happen in England. So it's a case of the usage, though, and the utilization is under 20%. So only 20% of the people who've got the sit-stand desks actually use them. So the problem is cultural and educational. It's not the actual equipment. So we need to change people's thoughts and minds, not provide equipment in the first place. I think the Danish experiment was fantastic, but it's actually kind of failed. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful furniture over there, but it kind of doesn't work. Right. So going back to this idea of exercise. So you've got the gym bunny on the left, and you've got the person who works neat, 2 hours 15, up, down all day, and they comply with all the regulations. Which one has the better health outcome? Now, we're not talking about fitness here. We're talking about the vulnerability for you to develop diabetes, heart disease, la, la, la. The neat person, by a long way. Yeah, there's 2 studies, American studies come through now. They both say the same very clearly. There's no European study. Wish there was, but there isn't. Yeah. But the gym bunny who goes 3 hours, out free time, 1 hour sessions a week, and then goes and sits all day, compared to the person who does NEAT. The NEAT person has got a better health outcome, which I think is what the gym people don't want to talk about for some bizarre reason. Yeah, can't think why. It's just, yeah. But it's a case of yes, going to the gym as well as doing your NEAT work is actually going to be really powerful, but you must do the NEAT work. So you've all been told, yeah, I'm sure you've all seen these diagrams, various diagrams in the past, yeah, where you've been told you've got to sit upright and be really, you've got to be not move, and you've got to have great postures. Yeah. Well, yes is the answer. Good furniture supports your body and gives you good postures. But what is known is the human body doesn't want to be static. And that concept of these static postures is so against what NEAT talks about. So the best seating posture is now the next one. And that doesn't matter if you're slumping for a while. Yeah, but you don't stay there. Yeah, you can go back up. And so really good furniture now allows you to sit in multiple positions rather than keeps you fixed in one beautifully supported position. It's an absolute crime to put somebody with chronic back pain in a chair where they can't move. What's the worst thing for chronic back pain? Stiffness. No, anybody who's got back pain here will know it's actually not being able to move is what is the biggest enemy to your back pain. So you need to be able to lightly move. So good furniture now allows people to adapt and move and goes with you, but supports you all the time. Yeah. So the way that furniture is designed and the way that furniture works has got to change as well with this. But you can, again, that one on the left is Haworth Fern. It's about £1,200. It's the most beautiful bit of kit. But you can sit in that totally supported all day and not move. Is it going to help you? No. Yeah, it's complete and utter waste of time and money, but it looks gorgeous. So who cares? Yeah, and the same with the chair on the right, which is called a Capisco. I use one personally. I think they're fantastic because they allow you to just fiddle and move and change your positions. Yeah, so we need to be thinking differently about the way we sit as well as the way that we get up and move around. Okay, so a company called Boz Design, they're based in Wednesbury. They make chairs. Yeah, they teamed with Loughborough University a few years ago, and they did a massive survey where they looked. It was VW as the customer, where they issued them with 5,000 seats, and then went back and gave them a load of education on how to use them. Went back a few months later and actually said, "Well, okay, how are you using it?" And they found that just people were not using the furniture to their best effect. So if you've got a good chair, the message is use it properly. Yeah, get the back to support you, move, and yeah, keep changing your position, please. Yeah, that's the key thing. So good posture is really important. Yeah, the way that you sit, I would really, the picture on the right is actually a promo picture from a manufacturer, which we don't work with. And I'm having looked at the picture, I now know why I don't work with. Look at the guy's neck posture. It's dreadful. It's, his chin poking out. You wonder why he's going to have neck and shoulder pain by the end of the day. Yeah, you should, if anybody using laptops here, you shouldn't be using a laptop all day. Health and safety executive, I quote, a laptop is a temporary work device. So you should be using it like the left picture with a separate keyboard, mouse, and raising the screen as if it's your office. You're back in the office where your monitor is at a height. Yeah, you want the monitor so it's roughly the height of your eyes. Yeah. So what you need to be doing is actually raising the monitor up using a separate keyboard and mouse. But if you don't, what you end up with is the picture on the right, which is this slouch posture, and you end up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon just going further and further forward, as I'm sure you all can remember. Yeah, so that's where you need to be heading, is thinking, raising that up. If you're going to do one thing equipment wise, that's what you should be doing. Yeah. One thing personally is really considering how much am I getting up and moving around? Am I moving enough? So nearly on time. Yep. So key messages: get up and move around regularly. Take a lunch break. I don't know how many people here are into Kaizen and Kaizen thinking and Kaizen process. If you go to Toyota up at Darlaston, where the Avensis is made, you get thrown out of your office at lunchtime. They don't allow you to sit there. Yeah, scandalous, terrible thing to do to somebody. But what they know as a business is that people who take a half-hour break actually end up doing more work at the end of the day than they would have done if they'd have been working through their lunchtime and then carried on through the afternoon. And it's because everybody just grinds to a halt halfway through the afternoon. How many times have you had a problem where you don't know how to do this email, you walk away from it and you come back and it suddenly, amazingly, hey, it just happens. Yeah. So taking your lunch break is absolutely critical for health because it gets you up and moving, but it's also critical for your productivity. So this idea that I'm too busy to take my lunch break, hang on a minute. The evidence says that's not true. Yeah, you need to get up and move. Yeah, if you home working, if you can separate your home and life work, do so. Have your predefined start times and finish times. Yeah, that's not always possible, but it's an ambition and something that you should do. Even if it's just a corner of your room, that's work. Yeah, and you can walk away from it at 5 o'clock or wherever you do. That you need to be doing. You need good supportive seating if you're going to be working for 8 hours, a day, but it needs to be able to allow you to move freely and doesn't want to be pinning you in. It needs to be something that encourages you to get up. In many ways, the minimalist seating that we had in the 50s is coming back. They're very much the Scandi houses are now producing the old telephonist chairs. Yeah, minimalist chairs that just go up and down and have a back that just is in and out. And that's actually quite good because it actually encourages people to get up because they're not that comfortable. Yeah. So yeah, the most expensive chairs are now the least comfortable. It's territory we're heading in, which is rather counterintuitive. And the last thing is, if you're working all day on a laptop, you really should have a separate keyboard and mouse and a laptop riser. And they're cheap as chips. Get out and do it. Get them, and they will help you enormously. Okay, so thank you for listening. Any questions, please?
Stuart, thank you. So yeah, any questions? I've got a couple of questions as well, but any questions, please type them in. I can bring you onto the call, that sort of thing, and see what happens. I've got a couple of questions for me, and this to sort of kick it off. First of all, just going back, and I sense that some of the guys on here are in the fitness industry, martial artists, that type
Sorry,
of thing.
guys.
I'm assuming. No. I think what I heard you say, I think, is if you do the movement at work, that's that you've got to do that. Presumably you do that and you do outside fitness and think that is a perfect mix.
Absolutely.
It's good to do
absolutely. Yeah, because the idea of the health benefits of moving at work have been demonstrated quite clearly to be better than the health benefits of exercising 3 times a week. But the combination of the two is even more powerful.
Yes, understand. Okay. And presumably then we're moving into this sort of brave new world now, as you've said, and I'm doing what I do. I'm seeing this where a lot of employers are contemplating or doing home working, remote working, flexi working on a laptop, this sort of thing. And it all sounds very good. It all sounds great. I know you're talking about the UK, not Europe now by definition, because you're in Europe anymore. But what responsibility does an employer have if they've got somebody working from home? I assume duty of care, but the legislation applies, I assume, to the home workspace and responsibility of the employer to ensure that people are working in a safe environment when it comes to seating, electrical contacts, all that type of thing being checked. It just transfers across to. That's what we need to be careful of if we are employing people, I assume.
So in the UK we have the risk. Basically, we're talking about a risk assessment here. Yeah, it's called a DSE, Display Screen Equipment Assessment in the UK. And there's variation. I know the Irish got a slightly a variation on a theme, but it's the same tool. You need to do that as bare minimum, and you need to action the results of it. Yep, that's what a risk assessment is for. It's no different to a risk assessment on a manufacturing process. It's analyze what have we got any problems and then resolve. That's what they're about.
Okay. So it applies, but we've got to be careful. You can't just sort of go, because I mean, I talk to people. I think as you were saying, doing what I do. If I had a message from Adam, a lot of people on the call, they know Adam, and he was due to join. He just said, I may have a sleeping baby on my lap when I'm joining the call. And bless him, he hasn't joined. But that's absolutely fine. But I'm seeing people at work when they're on a laptop or on their iPad or something like that, at they're on the dining room table or a little wooden chair, or the laptop's on the ironing board, and they're sat on it. It's just chaos. It's horrible.
Yes.
That presumably at some point, I know we're in extraordinary circumstances now, but at some point we employers have got to look at it and go, you know what, we can't allow that to happen, because simply put, we're going to damage our people, but we're going to get litigation as well, I would have thought.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. The litigation angle. Well, think of the COVID pandemic. It's a litigious nightmare. Yes. Yeah, as to on all aspects of whether I got COVID from my workplace. That really is a big question. Followed by I've been damaged at home because my working environment wasn't suitable for me.
Yes.
Yeah. And the writing's on the wall, and that's going to be happening. And I've seen a few things from sort of being released by the big legal houses that are kind of already rattling the cages to say, hey, come on, let's have the claims. Yeah, really? Bring it on. They're already wiring for it. Yeah, well, that's what it is, and we've got to deal with it. But yeah, so a good company now is going to be starting to protect themselves and start saying, okay, we need to deal with these problems before because we've got a duty of care and we want to look after people. But sure. The secondary consequences, we need to reduce mitigate our legal liabilities.
Right. Okay. A question here from Richard. Thanks, Richard. I'll read it out because it's easy to do it than click all these buttons. There are a number of adverts currently for walking treadmills to be used with standing desks. Any thoughts on their usefulness, safety? So that I've seen these things where you're sort of on a little treadmill whilst you're working. Are those good, bad, indifferent? Any official recommendations?
Okay, the walking treadmill was actually invented by James Levine, who I've been talking about earlier, and right. it was invented as a scientific tool to research into basic human movement and what actually define need. It was then picked up by Steelcase, who produced it and sold it. Okay, now there's a problem with a walking treadmill. It's easier if I stand again. Now, if I walk, the ability for me to do fine finger movement is much reduced. Okay. So the idea that I'm going to type while I'm walking means my upper limb is going to have to work very, very hard. And it's going to be adversely working hard. It's not good working hard. It's not exercise. It's actually in horrible positions, and I'm trying to stabilize. So there's going to be high degrees of fatigue. It's a terrible thing to even consider. Having said that, if I'm on a video call and I'm walking along, yeah, cool. I've seen one used really, really well by a consultant radiologist who had massive MRI screens in front of him. And basically, he had a mic that was put into Dragon, voice activation software. Oh, okay. Oh, Mr. Holland's MRI here. I can see this and I can see this. And he's talking away. That's actually was good use. But the idea of using any fine motor function of the upper limb while you're on a walking treadmill, forget it. It's bad news.
Right. Okay. I mean, I think I would just personally, I struggle to focus if I'm walking as well, trying to balance on a blooming treadmill thing.
Yes.
I just
yeah. As a very focal user, I'd have it'd be a nightmare. Yeah, absolutely.
Zooming in and out of focus.
Yeah.
Okay. And Olaf, a good question. Thank you, Olaf, as well. Thank you. What do you think about sitting on a seating ball? These I assume. Inflatable ball things.
Okay, right. Great question. I cringe. And I've thrown them out of when I've been in workplaces. Okay, let's analyze why. The first answer is because it's non-compliant to health and safety, and I'm pretty confident that'll be for every country in Europe, because you must have a chair that goes up and down. A ball doesn't. Yeah, so you can adjust it to the people and have a back support. Yep. Now, some of these balls are in a frame where they give you a bit of back support to try and get around this idea, but it doesn't work. Okay, apart from ladies, we can't multitask. Yep. Yep. So as blokes, we can't multitask, and the evidence says multitasking is actually nobody can do it, if we're going to be honest. Yeah. Now, if I'm going to sit on a gym ball in the gym, yeah, I'm going to really focus on holding my core and my shoulders and keeping my posture beautiful. How can I be focusing on typing and working at the same time? You can't. Yeah. And as soon as you actually go attentive, okay, I'm going to be focusing on that, what's going to happen to your posture? Poof, straight down. So I go in and into places on a regular basis, see people using gym balls, and invariably their posture is shocking. Right. Yeah. They're just slouched over it, and there's no support, and it's most appalling postures, and yet they're saying it's doing them good. And I'm just going, really? Yeah, let's get real.
That's a no then, is it, Stuart?
Yeah, that's a no. That's a long no. Yeah, very long no.
And the guy I'm referring to, I won't give his name. He's one of the clients, and he was talking to me. He's not on the call tonight, but quite safe. And he was sat on. He'd found the old what do you call it? The old space hopper. The orange thing with the two ears sticking out the top.
Oh, they're all right. They're fun.
He's bouncing around. So I'll mention it to him. Not the best thing in the world, by the sound.
No, not a good idea. No, you couldn't say it has any compliance or any validity at all.
No. Okay. So it's a definite a no. Okay. So any more questions, Peter? I mean, I've got another question on a different theme. I know something that I'd like to know a bit more about, and I'm probably going to affect all of us and the people we work with, our customers and clients, that sort of thing. And that's something that I know you and I have mentioned this, Stuart, in our conversations, is entering into the vocabulary now, long COVID, where sort of the long-term effects of COVID, unknown, but coming through. You've done, or you're seeing some of the work around that. Could you give us just a flavour of what long COVID is, what it looks like, and what we should be aware of?
Okay, long COVID. We are entering into I don't think there's anybody in the occupational health world who aren't bracing themselves for an absolute storm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What we believe is happening, and I say believe because there's not enough data out there to really back this up yet. We think that people who have had symptomatic COVID, between 10 and 20% are going to have symptoms beyond 12 weeks.
Right.
Yep. Now, what those symptoms are varies from the extreme end to pericarditis, in other words, swelling of the heart, yeah, which is not clever to say the least, yeah, down to fatigue, which is serious enough. There's even reports coming through of PTSD, yeah, of people having, and that's becoming recognized. There's stuff out there. So as thinking, well, a pure occupational health hat on, the challenge is how companies have got most horrendous absenteeism now. Most companies will not tell you what their absenteeism is because they're just terrified of it. Yeah. I'm aware of a couple of them, and I'm aware of one big company that's running over 20%. Yep. Absenteeism. Yep. Now, you cannot have a business running at that levels that's going to be viable and survive. So the question is, how do you get your absenteeism down to a more traditional, well, certainly sub 5%, ideally 2%, yeah, which is a good benchmark. So putting in programs to actually for rehabilitation to long COVID is essential. It's a marketplace that massively I'm moving into and moved into. We've now got 3 projects up and running, one of which will be on BBC News, I think next week. They're recording it on Thursday. So that's the project at Jaguar Land Rover. When you see that come on your BBC News, that's, I'm very proud to say, it's our project. It's not my work. It's my company's project. Yeah, I've got some good guys running that. So we know that rehabilitation works. We know there's lots of technical pitfalls with it, which we are working hard to find solutions for. But it does work, and it's got to be the way I think most companies, if they're serious about reducing their absence problems and getting the problem under control, they've got to start looking at is how, because the sad but true, the NHS is struggling to be able to cope with this. Mm-hmm. They're struggling to cope, full stop. But if you put in, now say 1 million people post-COVID with long COVID, how are you going to cope with them? Wow, it's going to disappear in a black hole very quickly. Yeah. So I think as a employer, you're going to have to take your own routes to actually help these people. Mm-hmm. because it will be cost effective. Our early results are actually showing that we are turning things round in 6 weeks with the vast majority of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the screening tools obviously eliminate people who we suspect of, because the last thing you want to do is somebody with a heart condition is actually start getting them to exercise. I think we'll take that as a given. So we are actually screening. We're pushing a few people out. We've got to exclude them from our results, but they're under 10% of the people we're screening. But the vast majority of the people we're actually taking on board and saying, yes, your material that's safe to work with. Mm-hmm. We're turning around in under 6 weeks, the vast majority. Wow. So, and that's the kind of processes I think a lot of people need to be working to now and thinking about, because it is cost effective.
Yes. Fabulous. Okay. So, guys, any more questions, any thoughts, observations, questions for?
Yeah, please. I might have to get Vicky Mittman into life, because I think I'm going into legal ground here. Ahoy, Vicky, are you there? You were talking about people working from home and employers taking responsibilities and stuff. Yep. Well, and what you said, big legal companies might be taking action at the moment.
Yep.
I think that this is going to fall over rapidly, because there's a degree of lead the horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
Yep.
And I can give, say, my operations manager a full PC, which I have. She's got a laptop. Yeah. Yep. Okay. But she works in different parts of her house on different days of the week, depending on who's home.
Yes.
That she is not going to trolley a desk around or a PC or anything else just because the health and safety executives say so. She's doing what works best for her and her family. So I'm not going to give her a chair, because she doesn't want to drag that around her house. So there has to come a point where surely it isn't a full obligation, and that you can only consult with your home worker, and they have to take a good degree of responsibility of advising you about what they would do within their own home, and from, say, a shopping list that's on offer. You can't force the workplace into somebody's private arena.
Yes, I agree. Completely and utterly agree. Yeah, my view on it is, if somebody's working at home from a laptop, they should have a laptop stand and be working with a separate keyboard and mouse. Yeah. Beyond that, it becomes a case-by-case basis.
That falls over as well, because we're all mums. And what happens is the kids run in the room and decide they're going to work in there. So the mum picks up the laptop and off she goes. She's not going to pick up a laptop and a keyboard and a mouse. It's like, go. And you shift and you get out of the way, because the kids are now settled there doing their colouring or whatever it is. The practicality around these suggestions, the reality of it, is very different.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. But my view is, as somebody advising businesses, that is where their minimum compliance should be. Because you can't have when the HSE clearly state a laptop is a temporary work device, to have somebody not actually giving them people the access to the tools to mitigate against that and work with the better posture. Yeah, you are, I think, probably going to be in a difficult position.
I guess, I mean, it's all okay until somebody spills the milk and they make a claim. That's when it's going to get tricky, isn't it? Because I agree with you, Sammy. What common sense and practicality, but in my experience, Stuart, I don't know about yours. My experience of health and safety is common sense doesn't always apply, and there's a very good reason for that. In some instances, but I had it with drivers, with the way they would drive their vehicles, and we train all we liked, and they wouldn't wear the safety belt. Well, we're still liable. We did all we could. We told them, we guided them, instructed them. They wouldn't wear the safety belt, or they overloaded the vehicle, and we got the fine. So yeah, I agree. But my understanding is, it's when something goes wrong and a claim is made, then it was what you explained to the judge, and you've got to be able to do that, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
But can you get away with it in front of a judge?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So that sums it up. Thank you.
Vicky has significantly. Vicky has unmuted. So I hope, Vicky, any thoughts from a legal perspective? No.
She's frozen.
Vicky's claiming claiming
There
that.
she is. Come back to us, Vicky.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. My
Look,
internet.
you are there. Excellent.
Someone asked me a question.
So no, it was just we were just talking about the practicalities, and Sam is quite right. You know, in the real world, we're using laptops and tablets and smartphones on the ironing board and the kitchen table and the kids and the dog. However, that's all also sounds okay, but until it goes wrong and somebody gets injured or they get hurt or they make a claim, and then it goes in front of the judge or whatever, and then we have to explain ourselves. So what's the legal framework? How far should we go? Do we ignore it, or do we have to be 100% compliant with it?
I think definitely don't ignore it, and Stuart's tips are all really valid. I'd say I'm not an employment lawyer, so don't take this too much to heart, but I'd imagine what a court will look at is what the employer has done to help their employees work safely and comfortably outside of the office in the same way that their duty would apply in the office. But obviously taking into account that people will do what works for them. So all the employer can do is to say, these are our suggestions, and they can put in a policy to say, this is what we consider safe home working. We encourage you to take regular breaks, sit on a chair that allows for movement, you know, walk around, do other things. And if you've got any queries, please come to us. But I'd imagine the defence to a claim will be the employer proving they have tried to educate their employees about home working.
Yes.
So it's basically, I think absolutely. I think it's to let people know what the guidance is and give them best practice and information and support. If they choose to ignore it, and there's not a lot you can do. I mean, so
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, fabulous. Great. Thank you, Vicky. Thank you. Sam, does that answer your question? Is that yeah.
Yeah, I think I know where I'm at on this one now. Yeah.
Excellent. Good. Okay. Any other questions? Any sort of final points for Stuart? Stuart wants to go and have his tea, I think. So. No. Okay.
That's assuming that someone's cooking it, isn't it?
Well, I did go fetch it or so, whatever. Yeah, exactly. We can't go out now over here because we're under curfew, of course. We're stuck in the house now anyway. So, Stuart, thank you for your time and your content. It's really appreciated. On behalf of everybody here, they'll come back to you. Everybody on the call, please, contact Stuart, say thank you, connect on LinkedIn and Facebook and say hi. I'll get this recording downloaded on my French internet connection. It takes about 3 hours to download the video, but anyway, I'll get it onto YouTube, and then you can have a recording. I'll send it out to other people. Next time round, I'll just say everybody on next Tuesday, the last Tuesday in March, and John Nottingham. I'm going to attempt to twist John's arm. I'm not going to bring him onto the call. He's quite safe, but John, because I know John has a particular subject that I know is going to be speaking as a sort of a baby boomer Generation X thing. This sort of diversity, inclusivity, we find it a little bit odd. It's contentious, but it's highly relevant. So, John, if I twist your arm, would you come and do the next one in March for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? Yeah.
There you go. That's great. So I know you've got some great stories to tell. So we'll talk offline if that's okay. Would appreciate that. We're really great. So again, another, I think, a really compelling subject that will be interesting, probably slightly provocative as well in a good way. So I think it's good that we have these ideas thrown open to us, and we embrace and build it in for us as well. Okay. Very quick. Sorry, Sam. Stuart, do you have a best practices for working from home document that can be shared? So Sam's got a leverage here. I like this modern Sam. She's great.
Yeah.
And can Sam put her logo on it as well? Would that be all right?
Yeah, I plagiarised it to the heart's content. Yeah, no problems with that at all. I'll tell you what, Sam, if you contact me on LinkedIn, I'll be able to help you on that. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Pleasure.
Good point. If anybody else wants that document, please just contact Stuart on LinkedIn. If anybody who says a big thank you, gives them a testimonial, we'll get that document free of charge. If you don't, it's 300 quid. How about that?
Hey, you're underselling me.
Yeah. Okay, guys. So we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you for coming and participating. Stuart, thank you again.
Pleasure.
We're back. Remember, those who are coming on the Thursday workshop, We've got the Thursday work starting this week. So it's Thursday afternoon, Thursday afternoon, Thursday afternoon for 3 weeks. You'll get emails, you'll get updates, and that's the Get Ready for Growth, because we can now get ready for growth. Certainly in the UK, some really exciting times ahead. And we're not far behind over here on the continent, as we're called, but we're going to get it all in place and running from Thursday. So thanks, guys. Hope it's been helpful. Great to see you all. Have a fabulous evening. I'll end it there. Stuart, thanks again. And I'll see you on Thursday.
Good to see you all.
I'll see you on Tuesday in about a month's time. So thank you, guys. Have a great
Thank
evening.
you.
See you soon, John. I'll catch you soon.
Good. Look forward to it.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.